Ooh, smooth as silk, Ronnie. Smooth as silk.
That's groovy music. I'd be nodding my head, Roger.
I know, yeah, but
I've got to be careful of that at my age.
You pogoing, are you, Ronnie?
Yeah. I was kind of pogoing, yeah, a little bit with my head.
So, hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new series. We'll just say hello to a few people to let people come in. There's Ulf, the ethically based ex-omnivore. There's always somebody with a difficult name to pronounce. That Wendy, that's a difficult surname, I find. I got into terrible trouble with Wendy because I wrote a write-up about Wendy and I spelled her last name wrong. So that was bad, isn't it? So I hope you've got your opening party piece ready, Ronnie. For myself, I thought, I tell you what, I'll start off by reading one of the poems of Spike Milligan. And then I thought, why should I? You know, he never reads any of mine. So I thought, fuck it.
Well, it'd be difficult, really, for him to read.
Oh, well, that's just an excuse. Just because he's dead, and just because I haven't published any poems, they're just excuses. Those, Ronnie. So.
Oh yeah, there is. He could do so through some kind of medium, couldn't he? Read your poems.
He could, yeah. A medium large, I think, is the way.
Yeah, you're talking about something else now, Roger, or still on the same?
Yes, still talking about the same thing. Vegan, of course. That's Sky. Dang, I missed the intro. Well, you'll have to watch the recording, won't you, boy?
Oh, watch the next one because it'll be the same, won't it?
It will, yeah. You can watch the next few thousand.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, oh yeah, that's good. I like that. You get the joke here? Yates is the new Yates, which is quite good.
Yeah, it's a clever play on words.
It certainly
clever
is.
Play on Yates.
Yeah, it's a Yates play. So what we're going to do, rather than kind of just assume anything, we thought that the first part of this is still really to talk about who we are, really. And so so if you kind of start off a little bit, Ronnie, because I've got a little PowerPoint just to show people. But before that, you normally start off your story with when your sister had a very athletic partner. I mean, athletic as in good at running around the track.
Yeah, that's right. That's
yeah.
You know, in a clean way.
Yes, athletic in a clean way. And
yes.
But was there anything before that? Was there anything in your childhood, or?
Well, kind of yes, really. When I kind of when I think about it, there were quite a few instances of me kind of acting to protect animals. You know, right from quite an early age. You know, 12 years old, my family went to a safari park, and we went out on a boat in a lake. There were seals in the lake. My family were on the boat: mum, dad, sister, and me, and other people as well. And a guy that it was like an outboard motor on the boat, and the guy in the boat from the safari park, he was throwing in these fish out of a bucket. So the seals would come up to the boat, and the people in the boat could take photos of them. But one of the seals, you know, was impatient and jumped in the boat and started grabbing the fish out of the bucket. And this guy, the safari park guy, grabbed a paddle, because there was paddles in the boat in case the motor stopped working, and started beating the seal with the paddle. You see,
I think the technical word is oar, but
yeah, or yeah, paddle or
paddle.
Yeah. And I went mad. I said, "You cruel bastard! What are you doing that for?" I said, "It's disgusting." I said, "I'm going to get you the sack from your job. You shouldn't be working here. Somebody like you." And everyone else was like, especially my family or my mum and dad, they were really embarrassed that I'd spoken up. And then when I got home, I phoned up the safari park and asked to speak to the manager. And like my mum and dad's going, "Oh no, leave it now. No, don't cause a fuss. Leave it." I said, "No." I phoned up the manager and said, "You got to give this bloke the sack." You see, and I was only 12. And then
I used to be a coalman. I got the sack. So did he get the sack, this guy?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I don't know whether he got the sack.
But that was your first.
I did
direct action?
I did demand he be sacked. And then there were other instances as well. I mean, there was one when I was, later on in my teens, where I was taking our dog, the family dog, for a walk in a local park, and there was this guy who was a caretaker at a local school, and he was known as being really quite a nasty piece of work. This bloke, quite a rough guy, and he had an old English sheepdog, and I caught him beating. He was lashing the sheepdog with the lead. And I just flew at him. Hey, what are you doing? You cruel bastard. What are you beating her for? What are you doing that? He said, oh, she won't come back to me when she's called. And I said, well, of course she won't come back to you when she's called if you're going to beat her with the lead.
Not a great surprise,
and
is it?
He said, oh, yeah, it's none of your business. I said, well, I've made it my business. And then I thought, what can I do? What can I say to him that's going to deter him from ever doing it again? Because I thought, well, next time he does it, I might not be around, you see. So I said to him, if I ever see you doing that again, I said, I'll get a gallon of petrol, I'll pour it all over you, and I'll set fire to you. Because I thought that's probably quite frightening. Do you know what I mean? And he was really angry. He was shaking from head to foot. And then I went off because my dog wanted to go, run off. So I left him, and then I went home and I told my mum what I'd done, and she said, "Oh yeah, he's a nasty bloke and all that." She went out shopping the next day. When she come home in the afternoon, she said to me, "She said you never know, you never guess what's happened." She said that caretaker you had a go at yesterday is dead. He died that night from heart attack. Died that night. So whether that was anything to do with me threatening to burn him, I don't know. But
So this is
maybe
this is your macho alpha male beginning of the series, then, Ronnie.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, I was no main macho. I was the smallest kid in my class at school. I was only little, but I just went mad because he was, doing that to the dog, and it was just like something that I felt, I always intervened. I always felt like a kind of duty to intervene in with these things rather than just kind of walk by like most people would kind of ignore it, wouldn't they? But no, I always would intervene, and I think that's something that's probably obviously followed me in my later years.
Yeah, the early time for me was, I always tell the story about jumping from desk to desk at school. I was on ride on the Isle of Wight at the time, and I was trying to let wasps out of the classroom by opening all the windows, and everybody else was trying to kill them. I do remember that. Now, One thing about this series which is going to be interesting is the fact that there's quite a few things that people probably still don't know about you, Ronnie, and this one is one of them. Do you want us to talk through this?
Yes. Now this is interesting. When I became vegan, it kind of opened my eyes to lots of other things, because obviously it's like a big change in the way you look at society. Like kind of when you become vegan, you learn about the oppression of other animals by humans, and like why that's wrong, and you wanting to fight against it. And so I sort of became radicalized in other ways. And so one of the things that I did was join the peace movement. I became, obviously totally opposed to war, totally opposed to the army, which I still am. And there was a campaign within the peace movement. It was really against the imperialist occupation of the north of Ireland by the British state, really. And it was like the kind of I suppose tactic of it was to try to persuade British soldiers to leave the army so they wouldn't be sent to fight in the north of Ireland. And so what we did,
the bit that they didn't like, this discontent that you got some information for discontented soldiers.
We had some leaflets. There was these leaflets produced called "Some Information for Discontented Soldiers," and it gave information to soldiers about ways that if they were unhappy with being in the army, the various ways that they could leave the army. You see, that's what it was. I mean, we used to go round to army bases and kind of put them through the doors of the, like the billets, the huts, where the soldiers lived. And I got arrested myself and another guy. We were up at Oswestry, at the military base at Oswestry, and we were putting these leaflets like under the doors of where the soldiers were. We got arrested by the military police. We got put in the guard room. So I've not only been in police stations, in prison and in prisons, I've also been in a guard room. You see, so we were in the guard room for it must have been 2 or 3 hours, and then the police came, and I think we kind of got released on bail. But it ended up with 14 of us being put on trial for something called conspiracy to disaffection, which is like conspiring to encourage soldiers to leave the army, basically. And like we had a 6-week trial.
You got not guilty.
6-week trial, and the jury only were out for half hour. They found us not guilty. So it's the first time I've ever been, the only time I think I've ever been found not guilty in my life was for that. You see.
Well,
So,
here's a couple of people who can't have been very happy. 2 individuals who pleaded guilty.
Well, they pleaded guilty. They were assisting soldiers. That what happened was there were soldiers that ran away from the army, and those 2 people actually assisted them to kind of remain, you know, to stop them being arrested by the army. So that was a slightly different thing, and I don't think they really had a kind of defence to that. So that's why they pleaded guilty. So, but I think they just got fined. I don't think they got prison. But when I was at the on that trial, I was already in prison. I was already in prison for Band of Mercy activities. Band of Mercy was a precursor to the ALF, and I'd been sentenced to 3 years in prison, and I was serving a prison sentence at the time, and I had to spend.
It's funny how cases and kind of prison sentences overlap, isn't it? It's all a bit weird.
Yeah.
I had to go back to Liverpool from Hull on that. So
you did when you said that the judge was like Batman, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah, I did. I lost my temper in the dock, which is not the smartest thing to do. So
because didn't he give you extra for that? Did he give you extra for calling?
Yeah, I got 14 days for contempt of court.
It's worth it though sometimes, and it's worth it.
Well, it was really interesting because I was, as a punishment, I was put in a cell with a trans woman, and it was really interesting because she was. I mean, we're talking early days now. I mean, what 87, I suppose, 86, 87. It must have been 86, maybe late 86. And so there was weird stuff because she would get a lot of abuse on the wing when slopping out and this kind of stuff. And yet she had a box full of love letters that the other prisoners had written to her.
Yeah. So, it's like that.
It's all very weird sometimes.
It's kind of like that. It's like that with, gay guys in prison as well. There's this dual attitude to them, which is kind of very, very strange. That picture, that one you put up there, that's Hunt Sabs. That's my kind of from probably about mid 1970s, and I think we were waiting to sabotage an otter hunt. It looks like it's warm weather because the otter hunts used to take, and then they became mink hunts when otters became.
Maybe the guy in the middle is a Geordie.
Oh yeah, because they're like that in the winter at the football games, aren't they? The Geordies. It might have been. No, I think it was summer because it was not a hunt, and the otter hunts became mink hunts, as I said, when otters became protected. But they still used to catch otters. They pretended to be. I mean, it's bad, isn't it? Just as bad to catch minks, of course, but they would pretend they're going after a mink and go after otters. Bit the same as they, the deception they use these days, of course, the hunting fraternity. And that's me there, a very thin version of me on the far left-hand side, waiting to go sabbing.
Well, not quite the far left. It's the person right on the far left. Is that Dave Wetton, is it?
Oh yeah, that's Dave Wetton on the far left. He was like kind of he was chair of the Hunt Sabs when I joined. He'd been, because I got involved with the Hunt Sabs in 1972, but Dave had been involved with them from early days, from the 60s when they were formed, really, almost right at the beginning. And that's Dave. There's a few that I know there. The guy, I think, the guy who's like second from the right, like at the back with the black hair, and he looks like he's got a ponytail. That's Robin Howard. Robin was given a suspended sentence way back in 1975 for kind of, he and I destroyed 2 boats that were going to be used for seal hunting up on the Wash. He got a suspended sentence for that. So some of the other people, I probably know some of the other people in there as well if I kind of saw their faces. But yeah, that was we were waiting to kind of accompany the hunt along the riverbank and stop them.
They were
other animals.
The mink hunts and the otter hunts. They were quite violent, weren't they? I suppose
Yeah,
it's because they couldn't move. I suppose that made it worse for them.
Well, it's different because you were right with them. With kind of when you sab fox hunting, you're kind of quite often at a distance from them. You're trying to call the hounds off with a hunting horn. You're laying down stuff to cover the scent.
But they can get away from you quick as well, can't they?
They can get away. But you're right up. It's a little bit the same with when you sab the kind of hare hunting. You know, the beagle packs, because they're on foot across the fields. You're in with them.
Saying why isn't anybody looking at the phone?
Well, we were waiting for phones to be invented about 40 years later, I think. Well, yeah, you know, like your smartphones. We never had, there weren't even stupid phones in those days. You know, there was only landlines way back then. And yet we managed to, there's no internet, there's no social media, and yet somehow we still managed to get out and do things, probably more so than people do nowadays. And these things still got organized. And yeah, I mean,
we've just had our first. I've just had our first bomber. I've just had to ban somebody.
Oh, good. You might have to ban quite a lot of people. Well, that's part because lots of people know about it and it's popular. That's why you get them.
Yeah. What about this one? What year?
Oh, that's the late 70s.
Late 70s. Yeah.
I was involved in a band called Total Attack, but just for a couple of years in like late 70s, early 80s.
With your famous ableist song.
Which one's that?
Most
people are morons. Yeah, we had the song "Most People Are Morons," and yeah. But how the band started, it was like we were all either hunt sabs or we'd been. A few of us have been in jail. You know, 2 or 3 of us been in jail for ALF stuff, and we formed this band. And all our songs were like about animal. Pretty much all our songs about animal liberation. When Margaret Thatcher got elected in. Was that 1979 when Thatcher got elected? We wrote a song called "Most People Are Morons" to describe the general human population who had voted that appalling woman into office, and we're still feeling the reverberations of a premiership even today. So yeah, that was one of our songs, and yeah, it was fun. I mean, we tended to play like I lived in London at the time. We tended to play around the London area. I suppose our most prestigious gig, we did a gig at Hammersmith Town Hall to raise funds. It was like a campaign at the time called Rock Against Blood Sports, or a fund, like a fundraising effort at the time called Rock Against Blood Sports, where they put on gigs to raise money for the hunt sabs, and we took part.
Joanna, are you in the chat? Can you get rid of these porn sites for me?
I can't. Yeah, I mean, I can't.
No, you can't. I'm talking to Joanna. So.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. You're getting porn stuff up there.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, they do. But why they think any of us would be interested in porn? Do they know how old we are, Roger? These people.
Well, I don't suppose that's an issue really with porn. The ALF band, are there any recordings? So there are on YouTube, isn't that right, Ronnie?
Yes. If people go on YouTube and search for Total Attack, it's a guy called Alex Punks. He's a Spanish, animal liberation activist, really, guy, anarchist guy, and he's got this. He's got a channel called it's Alex Punks. His name is, but make sure you get the right Total Attack, because there's another Total Attack. I think they're from Sri Lanka or something like that, and they play this kind of that type of music, that where they're all shouting like that, and that's not us. Make sure you get the right one. And there's 5 of our songs on there. They're all on the same kind of video. Well, it's not a video, but it's that picture, and then you hear the music. There's 5 of them on there. We went in a recording studio in West London, and
that's probably your only picture. Now let's move on. We're 20 past already, and we Hey folks, we've got something like 58 minutes, and this is just terrible kind of discipline for me and Ronnie. So
we don't know. We're not totally undisciplined on.
But this is what people came for, the food. So people say when they find out. I mean, obviously, it's interesting. It's not a competition, but I mean, you went vegan in 72. I went vegan in 79, and people always ask, well, what was it like to be vegan back then? And usually, what they mean is, what did you do for food, really, wasn't it?
For food, yeah, because because veganism is philosophy, and you become vegan by, basically believing in animal liberation and wanting to live according to that belief, don't you?
So this is the famous sauce mix.
Sauce yeah.
A few of us lived on this stuff, really, but it wasn't very healthy, was it?
No, the story of sauce mix is really interesting because sauce mix was kind of invented and produced in the kind of late 60s, and I think a year or two before sauce mix came out, there was this product called Protoveg, which was textured vegetable protein. It was like beef flavored chunks, ham flavored chunks, etc. And they were produced by a company called Direct Foods, and Direct Foods was founded by a guy called Peter Roberts, and Peter Roberts was also the founder of Compassion in World Farming around about the same time. And Peter Roberts had been a dairy farmer. He was a dairy farmer, and he got like a pang of conscience about all the animals that he was responsible for sending for slaughter, particularly the calves, and he gave up dairy farming and decided to kind of produce sort of vegetable based, protein foods. And this was kind of like, and although they kind of started, they were first produced in the late 60s, they weren't sold in any widespread way till getting into the 70s. And I mean, sauce mix really was
one thing
mid-70s.
we talked about that, Ronnie, was that in those days, and you remembered it and I did, is that the health food shops and the whole food shops were kind of separate in those days, weren't they?
Yeah, the whole food shop, because mostly when I first became vegan, you never had any stuff like that. There weren't really any products that kind of, were trying to, look like meat or be like
this would be in the health food shops and not the whole food shops.
Yeah, this would be the whole food shops were shops that you'd get big bags of grains and beans, and they kind of sell a lot of seaweed stuff because a lot of them catered for people that were macrobiotics that would kind of believed in lots of brown rice and seaweed and stuff like that, so they catered for them a lot. But the whole food shops they were wonderful. The smell in those shops, it was really earthy. It was real, like you could get organic vegetables, and I used to kind of
mixed with patchouli oil.
Yeah, there's a lot of patchouli around in those places. Yeah, and I used to get a lot of stuff from them because, like in my early days as vegan, I'd cook from basic ingredients. There wasn't any stuff like the sauce mix, and then the health food shops kind of started coming into being, and like today, that they sold a lot of like supplements, tablets and stuff, and they'd sell then they started selling the kind of more processed food, like the sauce mix. But when sauce mix came out, we kind of thought it was amazing that we can have sausages again, but it was like a highly kind of unhealthy product.
But Ronnie, we in Liverpool, we were radical because the thing that we wouldn't do with sauce mix is make them into sausage shaped. In fact, funny because we kind of objected to the sauce part of the name, which is so we always used to make them in. Well, you could make the entire thing in a block, which you could do, and then roast it, that kind of stuff. But we just made it into like burger shapes, but we would never make it in kind of sausage shapes.
I think I really made it in sausage because what we used to do was we'd fry it up with onions, and then we put in baked beans and mix it all up, and have like sauce mix baked bean mix. So it was more like a mush, and then you ate that with bread or toast.
Yeah, we used to do a tin of the chopped tomatoes in, mix it up, and then water, and then so then when you roasted it, you could carve it.
So you could kind of claim it was healthy because you'd put in chopped tomatoes.
Yeah. So burger mix that wasn't as popular, and it kind of wasn't as nice. Burger mix.
No, that was trying to be like beef burgers, really, and it wasn't as popular. And the sizzles was like a bacon flavored thing, wasn't it?
Bacon,
yeah. So now the sauce mix, I think you can still get the original sauce mix from there's a place in Brighton called Alternative Stores. You can send away for it. I think you can buy a great big catering pack for 70 quid if you want. But of course now
why would you?
Well, things have moved on, and there's like loads of different vegan sausages now, or plant-based sausages now, isn't there? So people probably aren't going to be so interested in sauce mix. I mean, I wouldn't mind trying it again for old time's sake.
I'd quite like to do that because it might be quite interesting because, I mean, it must be years, literally years, decades since I've I've had this stuff. So
I haven't had the original Sosmix. I've had, you know, there's stuff like Suma Whole Foods do something that, you know, is kind of, you know, meant to be a bit like Burger Mix and Sosmix, but it's not exactly the same. I've had that. It's not exactly the same. Happy Dog, that's a vegan food.
Have you had that, Ronnie?
I've not. I once ate some. I once ate some vegan cat food. That's a whole story in itself. How I ate the vegan cat food.
Yeah, we'll leave that.
But at least it was vegan.
No,
I never ate Happy Dog. Our dog.
They used to have a vegetarian version of this and a vegan version, right?
There was.
I looked on the internet and I couldn't find any pictures of the original packet.
No, that it was like I sort of vaguely remember the original packet, and we used to buy it in the great big.
Yeah, big sack.
Big sack,
and
like it first of all, it come in like it was all these different flakes, and you'd soak it with water. But the trouble is, when the dogs went to the toilet, like loads of it wasn't digested, and like it's like when we eat chickpeas or sweet corn, in it, you could kind of almost you could eat it again, couldn't you? Really?
Well, I could tell you a story about a rescued beagle who found a packet of Sosmix, burst into it, ate it all dry, and then went and had a drink of water. And of course, half an hour later, his stomach was just like solid.
I mean, beagles eat anything. That's, you know, they're kind of lovely dogs in a lot of way, but you've got to watch your food when you've got beagle around.
Yeah.
But then they brought out one that was where they'd made it. They'd kind of ground it all up together and made it into nuggets, you see, and that was much better because that was much more easily digestible by the dogs, and they were able to get more goodness out of it. And so we switched to that. We used to use the one that was in the nugget kind of Happy Dog one for our dogs.
Okay, so plant milk. So Arthur Ling and Leslie Cross, they were the pioneers of this, and Cross had this idea that which is a very modern idea, which is that we have to promote the philosophy of veganism, but you've also got to make it easy to live that way.
Yeah, I think that. I think that's good.
Makes sense.
They brought out. Plamil Origin was just in the tins. And it was sort of like condensed milk. It was double thickness. So if you wanted it in your tea, well, you'd either put less in your tea and more water, or you'd water it down. It was kind of more like a kind of single cream consistency. Now, when I first tried it in my tea, well, of course, I've been used to cow's milk in my tea, and I thought it was horrible. So what I did was I just drank black tea for a year, and then when I tried the Plamil again, it was all right because I'd forgotten. And this is what I say to people. They go, I can't find the vegan cheese that's like the ordinary cheese that I like, and then they're all like that, whining. You know what they like. They come to stores, and I said, well, just stop eating the cheese. Just stop eating ordinary cheese for like a few months, and then try the vegan cheese, and then your taste buds will have forgotten what the ordinary cheese is like. Well, not the ordinary cheese; they're like cheese of oppression.
Yeah, people forget about the fact that we have to train our palates, don't they?
Yeah, you got to train. We had to train. The first time I drank beer, it was horrible.
Most people don't
I got to be a big man. I got to force myself to drink.
And the first cigarette, most people hate their first cigarette. So
you do, because and then eventually you kind of get to like it. I mean, very unfortunate. Well, probably both of those cases, people get to like these things. But you kind of do because you try, and it's the same with everything. That's what I say to people. Look, it's only a taste. It's only a taste, and what you're doing is for a taste. You're prepared for all these animals to suffer and be slaughtered.
You won't die. You won't die.
Taste. You're not going to die if you don't drink.
The vegan version is not quite as good, and you say, well, by what percentage are you talking about? 5%?
It doesn't taste exactly the same.
Kill somebody for 5%.
Kill someone because that don't taste the same as the vegan one, so I'm going to carry on contributing to the mass slaughter and suffering of other animals just for my taste buds. Well, I mean, when you think of it that way, it's absolutely disgusting and deplorable, isn't it? And decadent and all loads of other adjectives.
It's very all of those things. So this is interesting, Ronnie. Look at this. Yeah. This is an old advert for Plamil. But look at the little slogan there.
It's very up to date. Those slogans are being used today, aren't they? you know, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it kind of this is milk but for humans or something, isn't it? And
Yeah, it kind of is. And it's interesting as well. It's like there was a film made by the Vegan Society back in, was it 76? You know, as part of the Open Door program where the TV
76,
crew
yeah.
helped. Was it BBC Two? And
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard not to laugh watching it now, because it's like very much of its time, and they're all very serious, and they're sat there going, "Hello, I'm vegan. The vegan is a person who consumes no animal products. Now we're all vegan here.
We're
Now,
completely ordinary people. We are.
and then there was like a doctor, some psychologist or doctor came on. He said, and he was in a white coat, and he was there. He said, "I have examined these vegans, and I have found them to be perfectly normal." And it was all like that. And it was like, God, we showed it. We did a screening of it in a local town, and like it ended up with everyone falling over laughing. And yet, because it was just the way and in those days, it wasn't funny. When I watched it in the 70s, it wasn't funny at all, because that was how things were, you see. But despite all that, the messaging in it, you know, what they're saying about the reasons for, you know, being vegan, exactly the same as what we're saying today.
Yeah,
That's not changed at all. That's
I
still.
mean, if you can get over the presentation and the
get over the try not to laugh at
and they all look as though they've had a board put down their back because they're all a little bit stiff.
They kind of, because they thought, oh, we were on television. But I mean, I used to be like that. If people look at my early interviews, you know, when I was like, I suppose in my 20s,
with your posh TV
I spoke
voice.
posh because I thought, I'm on telly, I got to speak social. Oh yes, yes, I totally believe in the ALF, and it's totally justified to take this action. Because I thought I got to speak proper. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't bother now, but so all my early all my early interviews, I'm quite like kind of
right. We're going to move on.
Anyway,
this is so there's a couple of me early days. So the top one is Club Row. So the people at the front, the three people at the front, are chained together. Yes. And so I'm there in the background with the beard, looking. I'm trying to look hard, because me and the guy next to me, we were there as kind of bodyguards.
So they're chained as a protest, are they?
It like, so we figured that because they were chained up, the stall holders might. So I suppose I ought to explain.
So the chaining, this chaining isn't new. All the animal rebellion and that, none of that's new. That was back in the day, people were chaining themselves. That's really interesting.
There's no super glue then. So
no super glue. Was that the? So you had to glue yourself and then wait a couple of hours for it to set.
Louise can rest easy, but
yeah.
I mean, Club Row was like a really seedy open air pet market, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah,
and so you could buy all kinds of other animals there.
Yes.
They were often in a right old state, just sat there. And so I used to go down to the BYV. So we must have been talking about 82. This is 82, I would think.
Yeah.
I went down to the BYV, and then afterwards we would go to Club Row for the weekly.
Yeah, was it every Sunday?
Yeah, all shout Club Row must go and all this kind of stuff.
That's it.
And,
but it
and
was
eventually it did, except that, as usual with these things, when you ban something, it just moved, I think.
It moved somewhere else. Yeah. That's kind of very true. But it was a hotbed of organising ALF stuff, because everyone would meet there. People would go to Club
and
Row.
Another thing as well, Ronnie, which is really brilliant, was the fact that you used to get, because there used to be some coppers mingling around, and there used to be some people there, usually guys as usual, kind of going, oh, well, yeah, I was on a raid last night and this kind of stuff. And of course, the actual activists would never say that. And so
no, they wouldn't.
It meant that these people who were saying that kind of stuff were taking the heat off the people who were actually doing it, which worked perfectly, so.
Yeah, it was where you'd go there to meet people, because of course it was much more difficult in those days to communicate. Because I said earlier, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, didn't have email. So you kind of had to communicate with people through, letters, magazines, or on the landline. You could phone them, but people were worried about their phones being bugged. So Club Row was an ideal place to meet up with people and plan.
Yeah, and like the national and regional demos, they were good as well.
They were good. The demonstrations, often things got planned at demos. Yeah,
it was like a networking, because you used to see used to see a lot of the activists kind of suddenly getting in together in a bit of a huddle and stuff.
Yeah,
and,
and you kind of knew what. Well, you knew the sort of thing that was being discussed.
So the bottom one there is Sea Shepherd. So
yes.
So that's me second from the left. And then I was talking to Sky the other day, and I mentioned this. So this came up. This is on Amazon or something.
Yeah,
and you have to buy it. Now the weird thing is, this is a picture, and the reason I took it out of the PowerPoint is that when it was in the PowerPoint wouldn't load, and so
it's frightened. Probably it's frightened.
I tried it on 2 machines, and so I thought, I wonder if it's that vintage picture. So I took the vintage picture out, and then it would load.
But it works now.
But it works just as a picture, yeah. So
I mean, it works now. I mean, like you do
somebody
look like
calling me George Harrison. What
you do look a bit like George Harrison, to be honest. There,
my sweet lord, eh?
Well, yeah, but it's a pity they ought to give you royalties for that, shouldn't they? They're selling your picture and making money out of it.
Or George Harrison's estate could sue me.
Or give George Harrison the royalties or his estate. Yeah.
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 Right. We're gonna move on from this self-indulgence, I think. And so we wanted to talk about a couple of the events that have been going on. So we're going to talk about the milk actions.
Yeah.
Now, so this is well, you can do the opening to this while I sort out where I'm going in terms of the slides that I've got up. Oh, here we go. Right. Now, this one here, Ronnie, what I want you to do with this one, what I want you to do, because we're going to talk about the reactions, but on this one now, I want you to think about if you were back in your press office and you had to defend these actions, what would you say? This is just the intro.
As you read out, the leading scientists are telling us that we don't have a livable future unless we make dramatic changes now, and that a transition to a plant-based future is necessary. People often forget that dairy milk, to be bottled, cows, like any mammal, they need to first have a baby. So they're forcibly impregnated and their calf when born is killed so that we can bottle this milk for human consumption. And obviously there's a huge tragedy there. And we say that that's a completely unnecessary practice, especially in a nation of animal lovers. And that the milk is wasted the second it doesn't go to the calf. And it doesn't matter if it ends up on the floor or in our bellies. The waste is the loss of life there, and that we can have a plant-based future where that is completely unnecessary.
So there's no sound on this. This was a tweet, I think. I just pushed them out of the way and get my milk. So I tweeted, well, it ain't your milk.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that the chap speaking there, he's, a lot of what he said there was very, very good, and probably would be similar to what I'd have said as a press officer had that happened back in the day. I'd have said, look, whatever people...
Just hang on a second.
Yeah.
Two protesters with the group Just Stop Oil dumped 2 cans of tomato soup over Van Gogh's sunflowers and then glued themselves to a gallery wall.
Yeah, so that was a North American report.
Yeah.
The tomato soup.
Tomato.
The non-vegan tomato soup.
That's it. Yeah, you see, going back to the first one, the pouring of the milk. I mean, I'd have said, well, look, whatever people think about that, that's minor compared with what's happening to the animals in terms of the mass slaughter and suffering of. I mean, it's 150,000 cows a year slaughtered in this country. About 60,000 calves are killed a day old or so, and then there's the other calves that are killed a little bit later in their life, either for veal or for beef production, ones that come from the dairy herds.
The only thing though, Ronnie, is that thinking of it as press officers now, if your story or your action confuses the public, then that's a major hurdle then for you to explain what's going on. And it seems that a lot of the evidence is that people, including a lot of vegans, are pretty confused by this action.
Yeah, I kind of think sort of think they are. But I mean, going back to kind of having to explain things, as a press officer, so something kind of similar to this. Like you got a really controversial action that occurs, and I'm there as the press officer having to kind of talk about it. Because we had the Mars bars incident way back where people claimed to have like contaminated Mars bars with, I think it's rat poison, wasn't it? They didn't really do it, but they claimed they did, and they'd missed some Mars bars up and put them where they could be found. And so Mars had to withdraw all Mars bars from the shops. And it was to do with Mars being involved in experiments on monkeys where they gave the monkeys tooth decay because, of course, the shitloads of sugar in the Mars bars.
Yeah, they would force their mouths open with
and I had to go on.
I Mars bars on their teeth.
Yeah, I was on the telly. They got me on the telly like to speak about this, and I kind of said, well, whatever people think about that action, that's minor compared with what's been done to the monkeys. And it's understandable that people are going to be angry about that, and people are going to do those things. The way to stop it is to stop the experiments on the monkeys. That's what you should be thinking about. That's the major concern. Not that people claim to have contaminated some Mars bars that got removed from the shops anyway.
Yeah, but Ronnie, what about the particular thing about vegans throwing milk around?
Well, I mean, I understand. Like, well, there's kind of two things, because what you would say, as somebody speaking to the media in terms of communication that's going to be heard or seen by the ordinary public, maybe a bit different to what you'd say to other vegans. You wouldn't necessarily be putting out the same message to ordinary people. I would say, look, whatever you think about this isn't what you should be thinking about. What you should be thinking about is A, what's happening to the cows and the calves, and B, what's happening to the planet because of animal farming. And what you should be doing is you should go vegan, or at least adopt a vegan diet, and put pressure on the government to, move us to a, to plant-based
I get you, Ronnie.
That's what I'd say.
Do you make of what
That's the
Debbie's
public
saying here? What do you make of what Debbie? I mean, the problem is that most people only see the graphics and hear the sound bites from mainstream media, and so that's true, isn't it? Because most people don't consume media in a very sophisticated
That's true. But if I was in a position on the media to comment about that, I can't help what the media put out. I'm not in control of what they put out or what people might listen to. I'm only in control.
So people are going to just see the images, and then so the narrative will be made down the pub. Oh, did you see those lunatics doing this?
Well, the thing is, but you see, I think there's two things to be said about this. I mean, I think this was an action that that created awareness, that created a stir, right? And what comes out of the stir it created is like really important, because there will be arseholes that are going to condemn the activists, but those people are going to be arseholes anyway. I think they're a lost cause, to be quite honest.
Well,
and like at the end of the day, when we're in charge, those people will have to do what we say, and that's the end of it. You can't worry about them. But I think there's another category of people that will be made to think about this. Because what happens is like you have an action like this happening, and then you have other stuff. You have quotes from the activists about why they did it, and then there are some people that
look, Ronnie, hold that thought, because I've got another clip which is doing this. So Cliff Grant from Northern Ireland was down in London and with Animal Rebellion, and asked somebody to say, well, okay, so what would you say if people said, look, some vegans don't get it, what's going on? And so she made an appeal to history, which basically means, that nonviolent direct action has got this kind of history of things. That change is never popular at the time, but then afterwards. So the kind of point that you just made, the need for radical action is in there. She said it's not fun to do this. She said it a couple of times, and so I think she was responding to what people understood as critique already. She said that we need to begin a conversation, which is what you just said, and also petitions don't work. And it's not, we're not doing this because we want to, it's because we kind of feel compelled because it's necessary. So let's just have a look at all that now.
What would you say to people, the spilling milk and going into supermarkets and pouring over the floor and stuff? And some vegans don't understand that, I don't think. What would you say to them to make them understand why you're doing that?
Yeah, I'd say, I understand why it makes some people uncomfortable, but creating this radical change that we need, when we see how change has been created throughout history, it's never been popular, it's never been comfortable, and we do need absolute radical action to create the kind of transformative change that we need. So we're not doing this because we think it's fun, we're doing this because it's necessary, because we need to, begin these conversations, these things that aren't being spoken about, and petitions aren't cutting it.
People are risking arrest.
Yeah, and this isn't something that people do light-heartedly, no one wants to be arrested, being around the police isn't fun, being in custody isn't fun, risking prison, for some people, none of this is fun. We're not doing this because we want to, we're doing this because it's absolutely necessary.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, that seems to kind of cover a lot of the bases. Apparently, they closed down. That was the bridge over, obviously underneath the tower clock of Parliament. I think they closed the bridge for 8 hours. I think was the thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's always a tricky one. But again, in terms of the public understanding, I suppose you've got that thing about some people will maybe take a bit of time to investigate what was going on. Others are just going to dismiss it no matter what, aren't they? So those are the ones that you're saying nothing you can do with those.
I think you kind of weigh things up, don't you? Because it's like a balancing thing. You weigh up like the awareness it's created, the fact that that's going to, encourage other people to take action. That's going to encourage people to go vegan, or at least, stop consuming animal products. There's that positive side to it. I'm not so sure about the changing the government side of it. I think the raising awareness is more important. I think we've got a government here that's like strongly entrenched in their speciesist attitude. I can't see them being made to move a great deal. But if we change people's awareness, then eventually, we'll have more vegans, and we'll have more vegan politicians, more people to vote for them, and we will really be able to create some real system change. And that's why the raising awareness.
Also, I think there's an issue of people getting used to it in Watson's terms, kind of ripening up. I mean, for example, at first they just showed them tipping. This is like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think, tipping the milk out onto Harrods floor. Now they're tipping it over all the flesh products. They're tipping it over the dairy and everything. And people are going, oh well, yeah, I've seen that. I got the T-shirt kind of, but it's not as shocking when it's repeated.
No, it kind of the sort of media value of it reduces. But what I was saying about this balancing thing, okay, there's going to be some kind of, probably as a negative side of it in some ways, but there's this positive side with the increase in awareness. And so I believe that when you balance those two things up, that it comes out positive. But I think nevertheless, there's still a question of, is there a way that they could have raised that awareness in a different way? Could they have like glued themselves across the aisles of supermarkets? Because that, the gluing in the chaining, that's a big thing with animal rebellion. Could they have done that? Would that have created the same level of awareness that would have then avoided the controversy of spilling the milk?
Yeah, without the negative part of it.
So would that have I still think that overall, even with spilling of the milk, that overall in the whole equation, it's a positive thing. But could it have been made even more positive if they'd done something else instead of spilling the milk that would have equally raised awareness? And I think that's the question to ask. And I think I
think you're right. There's kind of pros and cons of it, and really what they want to do is accentuate the good parts and kind of minimize the cons of it. But
I'd say to all vegans, you see, because I think some of the reaction of vegans to this has actually been deplorable, because not that I can understand people being concerned and not liking it that milk was spilled, but if you do that, you have to come from a position of general support and general solidarity with animal rebellion, and come from that position and say, look, like, I understand what you're doing. I think it's great. I support you, but I'm a bit concerned about this aspect of it. That's the way to enter into a conversation about what they've done, not just come straight in slamming them and criticizing them. And a lot of vegans have done that, and I think it's deplorable. I think Animal Rebellion, I think they're a very, very positive force for change. I'm not 100% happy with everything they do and all of their philosophy and stuff like that, but my position is of total solidarity with them. I think they're something that's very, very important that's happened to our movement, and probably in some ways the best things that's happened for years in terms of the awareness that it's raising.
I tell you one issue that came up, and Cliff mentioned this when he sent me the clip, saying that some vegans are saying, well, that's just a waste of food. Now, since when do vegans regard calf food as human food? I mean, it's a weird attitude for vegans to have, that pouring milk away is wasting food, because we shouldn't be thinking of it as food in the first place.
The supermarkets get rid of loads of milk anyway. We have to remember that. It's got a very short.
Well, not to mention the farms, Ronnie, as well.
And the farms do,
Yeah.
So really, is more milk being poured away than would normally be the case because they're just pouring a few litres away? Probably not. It's probably not, And I think we've got our movement has got to, express general support for Animal Rebellion. Yeah, it can be constructive criticism what they're doing, but it should be constructive criticism. And the important word is constructive. It comes from a position of general support, because this is, I've been kind of very buoyed by them, and especially buoyed by the number of young people involved, because like for years we were going along, getting older and older, doing our stuff and thinking, where are all the young people?
Speak for yourself, right? Speak for yourself.
Well, well, I know you're a young person compared with me, and I'll grant you that, Roger. But like we're thinking we're going to be going along on our Zimmer frames, doing the stuff, then we'll die, and that'll be the end of it. So I think it's marvelous. I think absolutely marvelous that you say there's all these young people. They're not all young people. It's older people.
I've got my future mapped out by Ronnie Lee. We're going to go along.
I think it's absolutely
Zimmer
brilliant.
frames, and then
I send out. I send my love and solidarity out to those people.
Yeah,
because this is the new direct action. We can't do the direct action like we used to do in the 8 days of there. We can't do it anymore because of surveillance, because of how the state reacted to us, the big prison sentence, how they hunted down people, the special police squads. We can't do that now. So the direct action you do now is direct action that's low risk in terms of imprisonment. You're not going to get years and years for it, and where people aren't bothered about being arrested, they'll sit there and wait to be arrested, because the consequences aren't as harsh. We were facing, I had 10 years in jail. People have had longer for what we did. You can't do that now. And this is a new form of direct action. And I think it's absolutely inspiring. I mean, I still think that, vegan education is vitally important, and having vegan education everywhere and people instigate it everywhere, I think that's brilliant. But what Animal Rebellion is doing, it goes hand in hand with that in terms of raising awareness. And I'm absolutely, I take my cap off to them, shall I say?
Take your wig off.
No, I wouldn't wear a wig in case it blew off, and that would be really embarrassing. That's why I never went down the road of wigs. I saw a wig blow off a bloke once, and it was highly amusing. And I don't really want to be that bloke.
Yes, you like painful humor, don't you, Ronnie?
Yeah.
But, lastly, on the Animal Rebellion thing is one critique, not from vegans this time, but I've seen it a few times, is based on class, saying, well, you middle class people spilling this milk, it's going to be some working class cleaner having to clean all that up. Where's your solidarity with them? Because it's not going to be the management of Harrods to do that. And so do you think there's anything in that, or would you dismiss that?
No, not really. Those cleaners have, are employed to clean up stuff anyway, whatever gets spilt by anyone. And
but you wouldn't want to make their job worse.
Well, it's extra work for them. But that's minor, isn't it? Those cleaners aren't being put in a lorry and took to the slaughterhouse, are they? Do you know what I mean? They're just doing a little bit more mopping. I mean, I think we've kind of got to get things in perspective here, to be honest, and that would be my reply. Yeah, I understand some cleaner might have to do a bit of extra work, but compared with what
they would suggest on that, I mean, I'm not taking their line here. What they would suggest, though, is that what you would get there is, I mean, for example, the ones where they're pouring it onto those displays of flesh, it's going to go all the way into the machinery, so it's all going to be probably, stripped down and all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, but Yeah, and someone's got to have to do that. But like, you know, I think we've got to get things in perspective, and it's all about getting things in perspective and going back to kind of, you know, the criticisms and the complaints about what Animal Rebellion did. That has to be put into perspective. That has to be put into perspective of what happens to the cows and the calves and the planet, right?
Yeah, I
Same way
agree
as
with you.
yeah,
One thing
you know.
we do know, both of us know this, is that whatever we think about it now, people are going to think differently in 20 years' time. Just like you said with some of the more controversial ALF things. I mean, people almost kind of look back with nostalgia now rather than anything else.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
even the day after, I was doing a stall in Liverpool, the day after the Mars bar thing, and some guy came saddling up and he goes, "You ain't got any Mars bars, have you, mate?" I said, "No, no." We've only got Twix left, I said, and
yeah.
So yeah.
But it's the same. It's the same with the digging up. You know, when Gladys was dug up, New Church thing. You know, the digging. You know.
Oh, I don't know. I think that one still remains pretty
Well, you see, I
controversial.
was at a demo outside Coventry Greyhound track, which is now thankfully closed. I was outside there, and this bloke going in stopped in his car, and he said, you know, he said, have you been digging up any more? Have you been digging any graves lately? Been digging up any graves lately? And I said, yes, mate. I said, I've been digging one to put you in.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, he didn't get out of the car. I don't know how big he was.
So look, we've got a couple of minutes before we're joined by Sky, and we have to hand over. But we want to say last couple of things about
we didn't cover
the Canadian people. So they've been actually, I think it's an interesting case now, this, because they've kind of been given a year, I think, but apparently they can do it in stages. They don't have to do it all at once.
Were they given as long as a year? I thought it's a lot less.
Yeah, 12. Oh, hang on. No. Yeah, it's 12 months probation, and it's
probation.
30,
I think it's 30 days or something was the jail.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful, isn't it, that they should even have to go to court? Or I mean, the situation should have existed that they had to do what they did anyway. So that's and it's a stark contrast to the other case. Where the DXE activists were acquitted for rescuing a piglet. But then, you know, the different cases, you've got maybe different juries, different judges, and so these things go differently. But this is going to happen. You know, people are going to spend time in prison. I mean, you know, the whole history of, you know, fighting for rights and, you know, people taking action against oppression is involved.
What do you think of this bit that I've highlighted, Ronnie? This is incredible. This is the magistrate or the judge saying that his ruling was meant to deter political protests of all stripes. Now, I mean, that's anti-democratic, you know.
Well, it isn't. Yeah, but I don't think it will deter it, and hopefully it won't. You know, but yes, I mean.
But
you know,
it goes to show that thing that, you know, the law is to protect property and to protect capitalist profits and not to protect people. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, it is. And when he says all sorts of protests, what does that mean? Someone holding a placard, like stood there peacefully.
Well, he does say breaking the law, but again,
breaking the law. Yeah.
But as you were saying about breaking the law, I mean, that's very subjective, isn't it, in a way? Because, you know, like. You know, whose law are we talking about? I mean, you know, I know people talk about
the French
a moral law, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, the French resistance broke the laws in France that had been imposed at the time by the kind of government.
They should all been killed, I reckon. So, hey,
here he is.
Hello, everybody. Great first show, gentlemen.
Without asking for your thumb. So,
well, yeah, I like the way you surprised me. Just bring me on, and I'm like, oh, there's my face.
Bring you on. So, people, we have the one and only.
I like that.
Again.
I feel like that squirrel.
Guy Jack Morgan, folks.
A hamster when he was like looking at the. Yeah, I like that you used that sound effect. I was trying to find some cheers for you. I was thinking ladies screaming. When you guys come on, just have women screaming like the Beatles.
or the Rolling Stones. So listen, we've got a minute left, Sky. So tell people how to get off this and onto yours.
Right. So the next show up is, of course, on Vegan. Of course, it won't be streaming to all of the platforms that we are streaming to right now. So if you head over to youtube.com/vegan, of course, or if you're watching on Twitter, you should be fine if you're at the Skyjack Morgan Twitter. Yeah, that's it. And Twitch. The Twitch users will be fine. They can just stay tuned. But if you're watching on any of the Facebooks, you'll have to go to the Vegan of Course Facebook page or head on over to YouTube.
Yeah, you'll get used to it, folks, if hopefully you'll stick with us. And so,
Yes.
so have a good show, Sky, and we'll see you at the other end. And we're signing off. So thanks, everybody, for...
We'll be back at the same time. If you've enjoyed this one, come back next Monday, same time.
The same Ronnie time, the same
There's
Ronnie
another
channel.
one.
Same Ron time, same Ronnie channel. Are you gonna play the outro?
That again. Okay, I could do that, couldn't I? Yeah, hang on a second.
The smarmy music.
Let me get that thing.
The
smarmy.
The smarmy music. Yeah.
I can do it.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.